"Put the food back, old man, or get out of my line." The cashier's voice cut across the crowded Chicago grocery store, and every head turned toward the thin elderly man standing beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. His weathered hands trembled as he counted a few crumpled bills beside a carton of eggs, a loaf of wheat bread, canned soup, and a small chocolate cake with blue icing. He was short by $43.72. Behind him, impatient shoppers sighed, while a woman in a designer coat lifted her phone and began recording. "Some people should learn to live within their means," she said loudly. The old man lowered his silver head, his face burning with shame. Then a warm voice rose from the next checkout lane. "Don't put anything back. I'll pay for it." Maya Bennett stepped forward before fear could change her mind. She was 29, full-figured, soft-faced, and dressed in the plain burgundy uniform of the nursing home cafeteria where she worked double shifts. Her shoes were worn at the heels, her dark curls were pinned into a hurried bun, and the envelope in her purse held the last money she had saved for rent. Maya knew what it felt like to be watched, as if her existence inconvenienced everyone. She had spent years hearing strangers offer unwanted advice about her body. Dates tell her she would be beautiful if she lost weight, and employers assume her gentle nature meant she could be pushed aside. That morning, her landlord had texted that she had 5 days to cover the remaining balance. Still, when she saw the old man clutching that little cake as though it mattered more than his pride, she reached for her debit card. The woman with the phone laughed. "Sweetheart, judging by your cart, maybe you should save the money for yourself." Maya's cheeks heated. Her cart held discount pasta, frozen vegetables, and 1 container of strawberry yogurt. Nothing excessive, but the insult landed exactly where years of cruelty had taught it to land. She swallowed, met the woman's eyes, and said, "Kindness costs less than humiliating someone for entertainment." The laughter around them died. Maya tapped her card against the reader. Approved. The old man stared at her as if she had handed him far more than groceries. Up close, she noticed the expensive stitching on his wool coat, the polished watch partly hidden beneath his cuff, and the faint scar along his jaw. He did not look homeless. He looked lost. "Why would you do that?" he asked. Maya gave him the receipt and carefully placed the cake on top of his bags, because nobody should have to choose between eating and keeping their dignity. His pale blue eyes sharpened with something she could not read. "What's your name?" "Maya Bennett." "And what do you want in return, Maya Bennett?" The question sounded less like suspicion and more like a test. She smiled sadly. "Nothing. Just promise me you'll eat the soup before the cake." For the first time, the old man laughed. It was quiet, surprised, and strangely emotional. Outside, snow had begun dusting the parking lot. Maya carried his bags despite his protests and guided him toward the curb. A black SUV waited near the entrance, its engine running. 2 broad-shouldered men in dark coats stood beside it, scanning every passing car with disciplined attention. The old man's posture changed the moment they saw him. The weakness vanished. Both men straightened. One touched the earpiece beneath his collar and whispered, "We found Mr. Moretti." Maya stopped. Before she could ask what that meant, another black vehicle swept into the lot. The rear door opened and Luca Moretti stepped into the falling snow. At 35, Luca was a billionaire businessman whose name controlled luxury hotels, shipping companies, and whispered corners of Chicago that respectable people pretended did not exist. To the public, he was elegant and untouchable. To the underworld, he was the Mafia Boss who ended wars with a sentence and remembered every betrayal. His charcoal overcoat sat perfectly across his powerful frame, but his grey eyes carried the cold exhaustion of a man who had trusted no one since his parents died. Luca crossed the pavement with terrifying calm, ignoring the armed men around him. "Grandfather," he said, his controlled voice hiding unmistakable anger. Maya's breath caught. The old man she had defended was the grandfather of the most feared man in the city. Luca looked from the grocery bags to Maya's faded uniform, then to the receipt still clutched in his grandfather's hand. "Who paid for these?" he asked. The old man smiled and pointed directly at her. Luca Moretti turned his full attention on Maya, and for the first time in years, the feared Mafia boss looked genuinely stunned. Luca Moretti's grey eyes moved over Maya slowly, not with the cruel judgment she knew too well, but with the sharp attention of a man trained to notice every hidden detail. Snow gathered on his dark hair and broad shoulders as the parking lot seemed to fall silent around him. "You paid for my grandfather's groceries?" he asked. Maya tightened her fingers around the strap of her purse. "He needed help, that's all." Luca glanced at the receipt. $43.72. I wasn't keeping score. One of his bodyguards stepped forward with an envelope, but Maya immediately shook her head. No. Luca's expression hardened. Few people refused him once, and almost no one did it in front of his men. "You don't know what's inside." "It doesn't matter. I didn't help him so a rich man could reward me." The old man watched them with a quiet smile while Luca studied Maya's worn shoes, faded uniform, and the grocery bag containing barely enough food for a week. He could tell she needed money. Her refusal was not pride born from comfort. It was dignity protected by sacrifice. Before he could answer, the woman in the designer coat emerged from the store, still holding her phone. "This is unbelievable," she said, aiming the camera at Maya. "She buys groceries for one stranger, and suddenly she's auditioning for a billionaire." Maya's shoulders stiffened. Luca turned his head, and the temperature in the parking lot seemed to drop. "Lower the phone." The woman laughed nervously. "I'm allowed to record in public." Luca took one calm step toward her. "Then record this clearly. Maya Bennett helped an elderly man while everyone else watched him struggle. You chose to humiliate both of them. One of those decisions deserves respect. The other deserves shame." The woman's smile vanished. Luca's security chief approached the store manager, who had hurried outside after recognizing him. "Preserve every minute of the security footage," Luca ordered. "And make sure no employee or customer uses Miss Bennett's image without her permission." "Yes, Mr. Moretti," the manager said quickly. Maya looked at Luca with surprise. He had defended her without speaking about her body, her clothes, or her poverty. He had simply used her name and demanded respect. That unsettled her more than the insults. Powerful men usually offered protection as a way of purchasing control. Luca's protection felt different. It created distance between her and the cruelty without asking her to stand behind him. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Neither did you," he replied. His voice was still cold, but it softened at the edges when he spoke to her. The old man suddenly swayed. The grocery bag slipped from his hand, and the small cake tilted toward the snow. Maya caught the bag with one arm and grabbed his elbow with the other. "Mr. Moretti?" His face had turned pale, and his breathing became shallow. Luca was beside them instantly. "Grandfather." The fear in his voice lasted less than a second, but Maya heard it. "Does he have diabetes?" she asked. Luca nodded. "His medication should have prevented this." "When did he last eat?" The old man tried to answer but could not. Maya lowered him carefully onto the SUV's running board and pulled a bottle of orange juice from her grocery bag. "Small sips," she instructed, supporting the back of his neck. One of the bodyguards reached for the bottle, but Luca stopped him. "Let her." Maya remained calm, speaking gently until colour returned to the old man's cheeks. She had spent 6 years serving meals at Lakeshore Haven, learning to recognize the warning signs the nurses talked about. Luca knelt in the snow beside her, his expensive coat brushing the wet pavement. Men who terrified half the city stood waiting for his orders. Yet he watched Maya as though she were the only person he trusted to breathe. "An ambulance is coming," he said. "Good. He still needs to be checked." The old man opened his eyes and squeezed Maya's hand. "I knew there was a reason I met you today." Maya smiled with relief. "You met me because you forgot your wallet." "I never forget my wallet." The words made Luca's gaze snap toward him. His security chief checked the old man's coat, then looked inside the SUV. "His wallet is gone," he said. "So is the emergency glucose pack we keep in the side compartment." Luca rose slowly. The gentleness disappeared from his face, replaced by the controlled danger that had made his name feared across Chicago. "Who drove him here?" "Daniel Mercer," the security chief answered. "But Mercer left 20 minutes before we found Mr. Moretti." Luca looked toward the rows of parked cars as if the missing driver might still be watching. Maya felt the old man's fingers tighten around hers. This had not been an innocent mistake. Someone had removed the one thing that could have helped him during a medical emergency. The ambulance arrived, its lights washing the snow in red and white. As paramedics lifted his grandfather onto a stretcher, Luca turned to Maya. "You're coming with us." She stepped back. "I have work in 30 minutes. My grandfather nearly collapsed because someone wanted him helpless, and you may be the only witness who saw what happened before we arrived." Maya's pulse quickened. "I didn't see anyone." Luca's eyes dropped to the bruise-coloured mark around the old man's wrist, half hidden beneath his sleeve. Then he looked at Maya with a grim certainty that made her forget the cold. "Maybe not," he said, "but whoever did this saw you save him." Across the parking lot, a grey sedan pulled away without headlights, and Luca's security chief reached inside his coat. Maya watched the car disappear into the falling snow, unaware that the kindness costing her $43 had just placed her at the centre of a war inside the Moretti family. The first threat arrived before the ambulance reached Lakeshore Medical Center. Maya sat across from Luca in the rear compartment, her hands folded tightly over her purse while red emergency lights flashed across the windows. His grandfather was being treated in the ambulance ahead, and 2 black SUVs guarded the convoy. Maya's phone vibrated. The message came from an unknown number. "You should have left the old man alone." Her breath caught, but she turned the screen face down. Luca noticed. "Show me. It's probably spam. Spam doesn't make your hands shake." His voice was calm, not commanding, and that somehow made lying harder. She handed him the phone. The moment he read the message, every trace of warmth left his face. "They found her number quickly," his security chief, Marco Bellini, said from the front seat, "which means someone accessed the store's payment system or followed her before today." Maya stared at them. "Before today?" Luca looked at her carefully. "Has anyone been watching you?" She thought of the grey sedan she had seen outside Lakeshore Haven twice that week, but saying it aloud made the fear real. "Maybe a car. I thought it belonged to a visitor." Luca's jaw tightened. "You're not going to work. I can't miss another shift. Someone threatened you, and my landlord threatened to change the locks. Fear doesn't pay rent." Marco glanced back, clearly unaccustomed to anyone challenging Luca Moretti. Luca, however, did not become angry. He studied Maya with a strange respect. "Then your employer will be informed that you are assisting in a medical emergency, and your wages will not be affected. You can't arrange my life without asking." "You're right." The admission stunned everyone in the vehicle. Luca leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "Will you stay until my grandfather is safe and we understand why someone targeted him?" Maya saw the worry he was trying to bury beneath authority. This was not the feared billionaire speaking. It was a grandson terrified of losing the last person he loved. "Yes," she said, "but only until we know he's safe." At the hospital, reporters had already gathered near the private entrance. Luca stepped out first, and camera flashes exploded against the snow. When Maya followed, voices immediately surrounded her. "Is she your girlfriend? Did she stage the grocery store incident? Who is the mystery woman?" Maya froze. One reporter shouted, "Miss Bennett, are you being paid for this?" Luca moved beside her, his body blocking the cameras without touching her. "Her name is Maya Bennett," he said. "She saved my grandfather's life. Anyone who prints otherwise will answer publicly for the lie." He removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders, shielding her burgundy uniform from the freezing wind. Then he offered his hand instead of taking hers. Maya hesitated before placing her fingers in his. The cameras captured everything. Inside, a doctor explained that the old man's blood sugar had fallen dangerously low, but Maya's quick action had prevented serious harm. Luca thanked her with a silent look that carried more weight than money. Then a woman in a white designer suit swept down the corridor. Vanessa Vale was tall, polished, and famous for appearing beside Luca at charity galas. Society columns had called her his future bride for months, though Luca had never confirmed it. She kissed his cheek without permission, then looked at Maya wrapped in his coat. "So this is the cashier's charity case." Maya's old instinct told her to shrink. Instead, she lifted her chin. "I work in a cafeteria, not at the register." Vanessa smiled coldly. "Of course you do." Luca stepped between them. "Apologize." Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me. Use her name and apologize." The corridor went silent. Vanessa's expression cracked for one brief second before she murmured, "I'm sorry, Maya." Then she turned to Luca. "Your uncle is waiting upstairs. The family council is furious you brought an outsider into this." In the private waiting room, Luca's uncle Dominic Moretti sat at the head of the table with 3 senior advisors. He was silver-haired, charming, and the only man who openly questioned Luca's authority. "The girl leaves," Dominic said. "She saw nothing useful." Maya noticed a gold signet ring on his hand. The same crest had been pressed into the red wax sealing the envelope beneath the old man's grocery receipt. "Where did that come from?" she asked. Every face turned toward her. Luca lifted the envelope carefully. Inside was a photograph of Maya leaving Lakeshore Haven 2 days earlier. Written across the back were 6 words. "Make the grandfather trust her first." Maya's knees weakened. "I've never seen that picture." Dominic rose. "How convenient." Vanessa folded her arms. "She appears at exactly the right moment, pays for his groceries, saves his life, and now earns Luca's protection. This was planned." Marco's phone rang. After listening for several seconds, he looked at Luca grimly. "The grocery store footage has been erased. The cashier claims Maya spoke to Mr. Moretti before entering the store." "That's a lie," Maya whispered. Dominic pointed toward the door. "Have security detain her." 2 guards moved forward, but Luca raised one hand and they stopped instantly. He crossed the room until he stood beside Maya, not in front of her, making it clear she was not his prisoner. "No one touches her." Dominic's voice hardened. "You would risk this family for a stranger?" Luca looked at Maya, then at the photograph someone had taken before she ever met his grandfather. "She isn't the danger," he said. "She's the bait." At that moment, Maya's phone rang. The caller ID showed Lakeshore Haven. She answered, and her supervisor's terrified voice filled the room. "Maya, someone broke into your locker. They left a box with Mr. Moretti's missing wallet inside." Before Maya could respond, the hospital lights went dark, the doors locked automatically, and a single gunshot echoed from the floor above. The gunshot came from the private recovery floor where Luca's grandfather had been taken. Luca moved before the emergency lights flickered on, pulling Maya behind the marble reception desk as Marco drew his weapon and ordered the guards to seal every exit. "Stay here," Luca said. Maya caught his sleeve. "Your grandfather's alone upstairs. That is why you stay where I can protect you. And what if the attacker is already with him?" Her question stopped him for half a second. It was enough for Maya to see the fear beneath his controlled expression. Luca looked at Marco. "Keep her behind me." They entered the stairwell together because the elevators had been disabled. Red emergency lights washed the concrete walls, and the sound of hurried footsteps echoed above them. Maya struggled to keep pace, but Luca slowed without drawing attention to it, placing one steady hand near her back whenever they turned a dark landing. On the 4th floor, they found a hospital security officer lying beside a shattered light fixture. He was conscious, with a bleeding cut across his temple. "A man in medical scrubs took my access card," he whispered. He went toward room 417. Luca's grandfather was in room 417. Luca's face became terrifyingly still. He signaled Marco forward, then reached for Maya's hand. "Do not let go." They moved down the dim corridor until a figure burst from the room carrying a metal case. Marco shouted for him to stop. The intruder threw a rolling cart into their path and ran toward the service stairs. Luca started after him, but Maya heard a weak alarm from inside the room. "Luca, your grandfather." He chose instantly. Instead of chasing the attacker, he entered the room with Maya. The old man lay unconscious beneath tangled blankets while a nurse struggled with the disconnected heart monitor. Maya noticed the empty medication line hanging beside the bed. "Someone switched the bag," the nurse said. "I heard the shot outside, and when I came back, the patient was barely breathing." Luca stood frozen for one dangerous second, as if the sight had dragged him back to every person he had failed to save. Maya stepped directly in front of him. "He needs you calm." No one spoke to Luca Moretti that way, but he obeyed. Doctors rushed in and began treatment. Maya guided him into the hallway, where he stared through the glass with his fists clenched. "My parents died in a car explosion when I was 17, he said quietly. "My grandfather raised me after that. He is the only family member I have never doubted." Maya remained beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Then trust what he taught you. Don't let fear make the next decision. Luca turned toward her, and something guarded inside him shifted. Before he could answer, Marco returned with the metal case. The intruder escaped through the loading dock, but he dropped this. Inside were medical supplies, the stolen security card, and a second photograph of Maya. This one was taken 6 years earlier outside a downtown church. She stood beneath heavy rain, kneeling beside a wounded young man whose face was hidden from the camera. Luca lifted the photograph, his expression changing. Where was this taken? St. Matthew's, Maya said. I volunteered at their winter shelter. A memory returned with sudden clarity. A man had collapsed in the alley behind the church after midnight. His shirt had been soaked with blood, and he had refused to let her call the police. Maya had pressed towels against his wound, kept him awake, and called an anonymous ambulance before disappearing because she was afraid whoever hurt him might return. Luca slowly unbuttoned the top of his shirt and revealed a pale scar beneath his collarbone. Maya stopped breathing. That was you. You saved my life, he said. I never saw your face clearly. I only remembered your voice telling me that pain did not make me weak. Dominic appeared at the end of the corridor with Vanessa and 2 family guards. A touching coincidence, he said, or proof that she has been close to this family for years. Maya looked again at the old photograph. The red wax crest in the corner matched Dominic's signet ring. Then she remembered something else from that rainy night. The wounded man had grabbed her wrist and whispered a name before losing consciousness. Daniel Mercer, she said. Marco looked up sharply. The driver who abandoned Mr. Moretti today. Luca's eyes narrowed. Maya continued, You told me Daniel betrayed you. You said someone inside your family paid him. Dominic's confident smile vanished. Vanessa stepped away from him. Luca moved closer to his uncle, but Maya noticed Dominic's hand sliding toward his coat. Luca, she cried. Dominic pulled a small pistol, yet Marco disarmed him before he could raise it. The weapon struck the floor. Guards surrounded Dominic, but he laughed as they restrained him. You think this ends with me? The girl was chosen because she saved you once. We knew you would protect her when you discovered the truth. Luca seized his uncle by the collar. Who is we? Dominic looked through the glass at the doctors fighting to stabilize the old man. Your grandfather knows. That is why we had to silence him. A monitor sounded inside the room, and Luca released Dominic immediately. The doctor emerged moments later. Mr. Moretti is stable, but he briefly regained consciousness and asked for Maya. Inside, the old man opened his eyes as Maya approached. He pressed a tiny brass key into her palm. Your locker, he whispered. The wallet was not planted to frame you. It was planted so you would find what is hidden inside. Luca stared at the key, then at Maya. Before anyone could question him further, the old man lost consciousness again. Marco's phone rang. His expression darkened as he listened. Lakeshore Haven is on fire, he said, and Maya's locker is the only area the intruders are trying to reach. Luca closed his hand around hers. The woman everyone believed was bait had just become the only person who could expose the traitor threatening his entire empire. Luca's convoy reached Lakeshore Haven 8 minutes after the first fire engine, but smoke already rolled from the east wing in thick black waves. Residents in blankets crowded the snowy parking lot while nurses shouted names over the alarms. Maya was out of the SUV before Luca could stop her. My people are still inside. He caught her hand, his expression hard with fear. The intruders are waiting for you. Then they chose the wrong building. Those residents cannot run, Luca. For 1 tense second, the feared Mafia boss looked ready to order her back into the car. Instead, he removed his coat, wrapped it around her shoulders and turned to Marco. Clear a path, she stays beside me. They entered through the kitchen, where smoke hung below the ceiling and emergency lights flashed red across overturned carts. Maya knew every corridor, every locked medication room, and every resident who might hide when frightened. She led Luca toward the north stairwell, stopping when she heard faint pounding behind the dining room doors. 2 elderly residents and a young aide were trapped inside. Luca's guards wanted to continue toward the locker room, but Maya refused. We do not leave them. Luca did not argue. He and Marco forced the doors apart while Maya crawled beneath the smoke, guiding the residents toward fresh air. When one man collapsed, Luca lifted him without hesitation and carried him outside. Reporters who had followed the convoy captured the Billionaire Mafia Boss emerging through smoke with an unconscious stranger in his arms and Maya beside him, her hand pressed protectively over an elderly woman's mouth. The images spread across Chicago within minutes. Dominic's plan to paint Maya as a manipulator was beginning to collapse in public. Back inside, the fire chief warned that the East Wing could become unstable. Maya pointed toward the employee locker room. "Mine is number 214. Luca looked at the flames crawling along the ceiling. "You have done enough. That key was given to me. Whatever is hidden there may be the reason your grandfather is fighting for his life." She met his eyes without lowering hers. "You asked me to trust you. Now trust me." Luca's jaw tightened, but he nodded. They reached the locker room as the sprinklers activated, soaking the smoke-filled hallway. Locker 214 had been torn open, yet Maya's missing purse and the old man's wallet remained inside. The tiny brass key fit a narrow slot hidden behind the wallet's lining. A false panel opened, revealing a memory card and a folded document stamped with the Moretti family crest. Marco inserted the card into a secure tablet. Video filled the screen. Daniel Mercer stood inside Dominic's office beside Vanessa Vale. Dominic handed him cash while Vanessa placed medication and the old man's emergency glucose pack into a black case. "Once Arturo trusts the girl, remove the pack," Vanessa said on the recording. "Luca will bring her close. The council will question his judgment, and we force the vote before midnight." Maya stared at the woman who had insulted her at the hospital. Vanessa had not merely known about the attack. She had chosen Maya because of the old church photograph. The folded document revealed the rest. At midnight, the family council planned to remove Luca as head of the Moretti organization if 3 senior members declared him emotionally compromised. Dominic would replace him, marry Vanessa into an allied family, and transfer the legal businesses through a forged power agreement bearing Arturo's signature. "There are 46 minutes left," Marco said. "The council has already assembled at the Moretti Hotel." A crash sounded behind them. Daniel Mercer appeared through the smoke with a pistol and grabbed Maya before Luca could reach her. He pressed the weapon against her side. "Drop everything." Luca's entire body became still. "Let her go." Daniel laughed. "Your uncle was right. The cold Luca Moretti finally found a weakness." Maya felt Luca's gaze settle on her, not possessive and not commanding. He was waiting for her choice. She noticed the fire extinguisher hanging inches from her hand and remembered the self-defense drills required at Lakeshore Haven. "I am not his weakness," she said. Then she drove her heel onto Daniel's foot, twisted away, and pulled the extinguisher free. Luca crossed the distance before Daniel recovered. He disarmed him with one controlled movement, while Maya sprayed the extinguisher into the flames, blocking the exit. Together, they escaped moments before part of the ceiling collapsed. In the parking lot, police took Daniel into custody, but Luca did not look at the man who had betrayed him. He looked only at Maya, checking her hands and face for injuries without touching until she nodded permission. "You went back for evidence that could save my empire," he said quietly. "I went back because your grandfather trusted me, and because innocent people would suffer if Dominic won." She placed the memory card in his palm. "So stop him." At the Moretti Hotel, the family council had gathered in a ballroom beneath crystal chandeliers. Dominic stood at the head of the table while Vanessa waited beside him in a silver gown. 3 minutes remained before midnight when the doors opened. Luca entered first, his shirt stained with smoke, followed by Maya in her cafeteria uniform and his black coat. Whispers spread around the room. Dominic smiled. "You brought the woman who destroyed your judgment." Luca walked directly to Maya's side and took her hand before every rival, ally, and camera present. "No," he said, "I brought the woman who exposed your betrayal." Marco connected the memory card to the ballroom screens. Vanessa's recorded voice filled the room, and the council erupted. Dominic reached for the forged agreement, but Maya stepped forward and placed Arturo's original document beside it. "The signatures do not match," she said. "His right hand trembles when his blood sugar drops. This signature was written with a steady hand after you had already taken his medication. One senior advisor examined the papers and nodded. The vote turned against Dominic. Vanessa backed toward the side exit, her perfect composure gone. Then every screen suddenly went black, the ballroom doors locked, and Dominic began to laugh. You found the evidence I wanted you to find. Luca pulled Maya behind the stone pillar as armed men appeared on the balcony above. Dominic raised a remote control and looked at the clock as it struck midnight. The council vote was never the real target, he said. While you were saving your empire, someone entered your grandfather's hospital room. Luca's phone rang. A nurse was crying on the other end. Arturo Moretti was gone, and on his empty bed lay a message addressed to Maya. Come alone, or the old man dies before sunrise. Maya read the message once, then lifted her eyes to Luca. I'm going. His expression turned colder than the winter outside. No, your grandfather was taken because he trusted me, and the person who took him expects you to walk into a trap. Armed men still watched from the ballroom balcony, but Marco had already cut the lights and moved Luca's loyal guards into position. Luca pulled Maya behind the stone pillar as controlled chaos erupted around them. Glass shattered, council members dropped beneath tables, and Marco's team disarmed Dominic's men without firing into the crowd. Vanessa tried to reach a side exit, but two guards blocked her path. Dominic grabbed her wrist and dragged her forward as a shield. Let us leave, Luca, or your grandfather dies. Luca stepped from cover with terrifying calm. You have already lost the council, the businesses, and every ally who believed your lies. Dominic smiled. But I found the one thing you fear losing. Maya moved beside Luca before he could stop her. She held up the note. Where did they take Arturo? Dominic glanced at the handwritten message. Ask Vanessa. She planned the route. Vanessa's face drained of colour. He promised no one would be hurt. You removed an elderly man's medication, Maya said. You chose harm the moment you treated his life like a bargaining chip. Vanessa's composure finally broke. She looked toward the armed guards surrounding her and whispered, the old Moretti freight terminal near the river. Dominic turned on her, but Marco seized him before he could react. Luca ordered the police waiting outside to take Dominic and Vanessa into custody, then faced Maya. You are not going inside that terminal. I know Arturo's symptoms. If they took his medication again, every minute matters. Luca's jaw tightened. Then you stay at my side. 20 minutes later, black SUVs stopped 2 blocks from the abandoned river terminal. Snow blew across rusted tracks and a single yellow light burned above the loading door. Marco's team surrounded the building while Luca and Maya entered through a service passage. Inside, Arturo sat tied to a chair beside stacked shipping crates. Daniel Mercer's younger brother, Elias, stood behind him holding a pistol. He had been the hidden partner Dominic never named. The man who had erased the grocery store footage and set the fire at Lakeshore Haven. The famous Maya Bennett, Elias said, the woman who keeps saving Moretti men. Luca stepped in front of her. Release my grandfather. First, transfer the shipping company to me. Elias nodded toward a laptop on a crate. One signature and the old man walks out. Arturo's head lifted weakly. Do not sign. Luca looked at his grandfather, then at Maya. His empire controlled billions, but his decision came without hesitation. He approached the laptop. You want the company? Take it. Maya understood what Elias did not. Luca was choosing family over power, proving that Dominic had never truly known him. As Luca reached for the keyboard, Maya noticed a thin tube running from Arturo's sleeve to a small medical pump beneath the chair. The display flashed a warning. Elias had connected the wrong medication. Luca, the pump. Elias turned toward Maya, and that single distraction was enough. Arturo kicked the crate beside him. The laptop crashed to the floor. Luca disarmed Elias, and Marco's guards rushed through both entrances. No shot was fired. Within seconds, Elias was restrained. Maya dropped beside Arturo, shut off the pump, and checked his breathing. Stay with me, she said, holding his hand. You still owe me a promise to eat soup before cake. Arturo opened his eyes and managed a faint smile. Bossy girl. Luca knelt beside her on the cold floor, placing his coat around both Maya and his grandfather as paramedics entered. His hands trembled only once, and Maya covered them with hers. At sunrise, Arturo was stable in the hospital. Dominic, Vanessa, Daniel, and Elias faced charges supported by the recordings, forged documents, security evidence, and witness testimony. The Moretti Council confirmed Luca's leadership, but his first public decision surprised everyone. He created a protected fund for Lakeshore Haven, restored every damaged room, and guaranteed its residents would never again be used as leverage. He offered Maya a position directing the program, not as charity, but because she understood dignity better than anyone he knew. Weeks later, Maya returned to the same grocery store with Arturo. The cashier apologized publicly, and the woman who had filmed the humiliation quietly lowered her phone. Luca entered behind them, crossed the crowded aisle, and took Maya's hand in full view of everyone. "You never needed me to make you worthy," he said softly. "You were worthy when no one was watching. I only became wise enough to see it." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but this time she did not lower her face, and you were never as cold as people believed. Luca touched his forehead to hers. "Only waiting for someone brave enough to remind me I still had a heart." Months later, under warm lights at Lakeshore Haven, Arturo watched his grandson ask Maya to build a life with him. She said yes without changing her body, shrinking her voice, or apologizing for taking up space. The woman strangers had mocked became the heart of a family that finally understood her value, while the feared Mafia Boss discovered that protecting love required more courage than ruling an empire. And all of it began with $43. A small chocolate cake, and one act of kindness. Would you have helped Arturo when everyone else looked away? Subscribe to the channel for more emotional Mafia Boss stories where courage is seen, dignity is restored, and love chooses the person the world underestimated.